Welcome to Self-Perfected.
And then, nice.
Hello, everyone. So sorry to keep you waiting. It's just me and Drake today.
No,
Wait.
and Christine and See God. Don't forget.
Oh, damn it. I thought it was just gonna be me and you.
That was blasphemous, man. How could you forget your See
How
God?
dare thee insult
We
the
wanted it
sea
to be
god.
the Drake and Cam Power Hour.
Oh, the sea god is always omnipresent. I said that correctly this
Always
time.
listening. Always here.
So is
Always
watching.
breathing into the mic, giggling. Yeah, I can tell when a joke doesn't land because I can hear Christine go.
That's like a common. That's a constant sound in our house.
If it's really
thought it
bad,
was
she'll
the
be
air
like-
conditioning.
If it's really bad, she'll be like, ugh. So should we start light? I mean, I guess we already started, but or should we go deep like real fast?
Let's go deep real fast. Let's jump right into it.
Let's
Sometimes
go right into it.
You know, I just can't help myself.
You
It's
don't
just
need to
like,
wait.
Let's go. All right.
So I sent you that video. It
Yeah.
was like this morning when I sent it, right?
Yeah, you sent it this
I
morning.
watched it yesterday while I was putting up an electric fence, or I
Okay.
listened to it rather.
Okay.
That context is necessary because
Okay.
because that video was electric.
And it was about fencing things in a little bit, you know, in a certain context, you know.
It was about breaking down boundaries, but also about questioning structures and
Yeah.
looking at what structures are best.
Okay.
So-
So I have a few things. So basically,
Did you take some notes?
I did take some notes. Can you give us like a little bit of an overview of the topic, and then I want to dive in on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll give the quick synopsis.
Yeah.
It was called The War on Reality. And I liked it because it was kind of two people, I guess you would say more who are like philosophical versus like they're conspiracy theorists or just, like someone like a Tim Pool who's just talking about something, but they're just talking about it. Like these were like people who are sort of philosophers studying a particular concept, developing the points, trying to articulate it, that they're more in the philosophical vein, although it wasn't an overly intellectual discussion.
Yeah.
And it was called The War on Reality. And they were just, so the one guy was coming from, I don't remember their names. One guy was coming from, he used to be an environmentalist, like environmentalist activist type.
And he looked like it too. He had his hair in a bun.
Some things never change, I guess, right? Keep what's best, right? He was like, it's just the look. That's all I really need. And so he was coming from that angle. And then the woman was coming from a feminism angle. That's where her background was feminism. Kind of more like traditional feminism.
Yeah.
And so they were both kind of arriving at the same conclusion because they were both sort of trying to deconstruct the movements that they were a part of and seeing how those movements are just part of a bigger picture of all these different sort of like basically at the moment, leftist movements, we consider them leftist movements that are just being used by the system.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the right is not part of it as well, but yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it's really cool because this was like their first time even speaking to each other.
Yeah.
And so like and they were coming to the same conclusions and like acknowledging each other's work and like, oh yeah, you see that too. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But you see it from this perspective. I see it from that
They're
perspective.
both coming to the same point. So what is the point that they were getting to? It's something we've been talking about this whole time, like
Yeah.
every podcast basically, which is this, and there's a lot of points to it, but like the system, it's like through the failure of religion to provide purpose for people. People are searching for something. There's no more, people know God doesn't exist and so forth, right? So the system is stepping forth as the solution to everybody. And the purpose of the system, it's based on money, it's based on capitalism, it's based on profit, and it's just commodifying everything. So it's turning everything
Yeah.
into something that can be sold, something that can, and so it's taking reality, breaking it down into units that can then be repackaged and sold in some way to the point where even your body is now being patented, your DNA is being patented, and that way they can give you this genetic alteration or this biomodification or this or that. And what it ultimately comes to is what they were both arriving at was it's playing into this whole transhumanism thing and these tech elite who were wanting to create sort of this utopia based on a machine that gives you everything you want at all times and makes everything perfect for you. And you're just basically the consumer of that. And as an individual, you don't have rights. There is no freedom of speech. There's just the machine. And then it's basically the God, like it has replaced God. And so the whole point was all the technology, the AI, all these points is a way of creating God that just sees physical reality as components in a machine that creates some kind of utopia. And one of the other important points, I think, which we can go into all these, was that it's really just an elite project, meaning because they made this point, which is at the end of the day, somebody has to do the dishes, is what they were saying. Right?
Yes.
Meaning somebody, but no, you want to do this. They have a machine that does the dishes. Yeah, but somebody's going to have to service the machine at some level. And then somebody's going to have to do their dishes because they can't be, like somebody's going to have to provide food for them because the machine broke it or whatever. Like, it's just an analogy, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's like, if everybody's sucked into the metaverse, there's the person who's kind of behind it, who's not really participating in it and is just benefiting money-wise from everyone doing that. And the other point, another really cool point, was them talking about how the marketing around like the metaverse and these points being like, your life is shit.
Right.
And if you have a shit life, just go into the metaverse and you'll have friends and stuff. And they were like, that's literally what is being presented. So without going into all those, I know you have some points you want to.
Yes. Okay. So what I wanted to start out with, and thanks for that whole overview, because that hits on all the things that I wanted to talk about anyway. The one thing that I wanted to start with was they were mentioning about one guy calls it the machine, and he says, it's not my word. I got this from Aldous Huxley, from D.H. Lawrence, like all these, like George Orwell, all the guys who could see it beforehand, who, like, this was years and years ago. This is now over 40 years ago, right?
Hey, real quick, did you read that book, that one by Ian Forster called it's like The Machine Never Sleeps or The Machine Never Stops or something? I actually haven't read it. Katie read it.
Okay.
I think she read some out loud when you guys were in Houston, like a couple of years ago. At our house.
Yeah.
But maybe someone can look that up. I think it's called The Machine Never Stops or something like that. But it's very specifically about people living in a room where a machine provides them with everything and them starting to question that.
I remember actually now, because we read it and I was reading from the book out loud at the counter.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, you were reading it. Yeah, that's right.
Does that sound familiar? The Machine Stops? A science
Who's it by?
fiction story?
Is it by Forster?
Yes. E.M.
Oh, it's called The Machine Stops. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. I remember reading that book and it was getting.
I know about it because Katie's described it, explained it to me, right? But it's just interesting because they didn't bring that one up, but it was like the perfect story analogy of,
But here's the point. The point is, this was pretty much mainstream over 40 years ago.
Dude, when was that book written, Christine?
Let me see here. It's funny. I'm reading this summary, and it's like,
she's like, "Oh, I just read the book." She's like, "I've read it."
The Machine Stops takes place in an advanced society where humans have lost the ability to survive on the Earth's surface. Therefore, individuals are isolated and packed into small beehive-like structures underground. Furthermore, travel is allowed but often avoided and unnecessary. And then let me just look up the date.
I remember now because I was reading about like them getting on some sort of plane.
Publication date?
1909.
Okay, 1909. And they were talking about planes back then and like getting on these planes that would basically travel like almost space travel, like kind of what Elon Musk is talking about now, of like how you can get to one city to the next across the world in like 30 minutes. But like, I remember reading that and I thought, you know what I thought that book was? I thought it was Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. But then when I read Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, none of that stuff was in it. And I was like, oh, I must have.
Also a very similar theme in a way and a whole nother angle on it. Yeah, that's another great book.
No, that book is really important to this topic. Super important to this topic.
Oh, we can go into all this stuff, man.
Okay.
Now it's just me and you We have the floor, Drake. None of the Asif and Mitch. They by the way, they had some
Finally.
meetings that they had to direct, so that's why they're not here. So, we didn't kill them, or they're not gone or anything. They're still here. They're probably listening right now. Like, they have one earpiece in and they're on their meetings, like they're listening in. They're like, what are they talking about?
As if they're like in the UN meetings, like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, the guy is just like listening to Kanye West. Like,
So the important part that I wanted to start off with is they mentioned all these authors from the past and how they could see it, and this was pretty mainstream. And I was just looking at the point of like how much shit has been thrown on us as far as a society, where we've been dumbed down to the point where we can't even see things that they were seeing literally a century ago, an entire century ago.
and then even when it's happening, people can't see it.
Yes. And so it's like, oh, like we've actually been deliberately, or at least in some way systematically, had a layer of shit just caked on top of us.
It's almost like there's a machine that's trying to educate us to not see what it's doing so that we won't stop it.
There's something there. I don't know what it is, but I wanted to start with that because, like, okay, that should show you just how dumb we are as a society. And there's that's so important to this topic in general. But the other main piece here was they started talking about, it was actually kind of beautiful when they were talking about motherhood, right? And I don't remember the woman's name, but she was saying, as an intellectual and as a mother, it's really hard to describe to someone, like, you've had a really great day and they ask you, what did you do? And it's like, I couldn't really tell you what we did, because it was like, there's all this, like, what society would consider mundane things. And so if I described it to you, it would sound stupid or silly or whatever. But I was thinking about this from the perspective of whenever someone describes bliss, they describe like what would be an amazing life is like, you don't have to be anywhere. There's nothing you have to really do. It's like everything is provided for you. You just feel good. You can be enjoying the moment. You can be here all the time.
You just live underground in a pod and you
but seriously though, this is what you were supposed to be given as a child.
Yeah.
That's what, like, you'd be provided that by your mother as a child, and you would experience that, and then you wouldn't need to be searching for that for the rest of your life. That's what people keep going back and searching for, because they didn't actually get that as a child. That's what the purpose of a mother is. But we've commoditized it to this point where it's just like, you don't have a job, you're not doing anything, you're worthless essentially. But that's what a mother can provide. And so because we don't have that, then what ends up happening, go ahead.
No. Like, you're making such a good point. I'll flag it for later. It's just another thing.
Okay. Because we don't have this, then basically what ends up happening is a mother doesn't grow up, like a child does not grow up understanding the value of that even. Mm-hmm. And so then they don't place value on creating that position as a mother for their children.
Yeah.
And what's super, like, the huge point is, everyone talks about like being a god and like, oh, like feeling at one with the universe or whatever, or giving as you want to receive. Like, that is the actual position where you can be like the God who provides the environment for your child to be living in bliss and growing and actually like developing themselves, not just like in a bubble, but rather like you're providing unconditionally as we call God in, like, any kind of religious text or anything like that. That's what a real God would do. But it's like you've been blinded to that, or we as a society have been blinded to that.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And it's like, you take all of these little points in which you should be acting like God. You don't do any of those, and then you just project it as this entity that exists and somehow does all that, even though no one's getting any of it. It's kind of, but then what they do is they place that point in the future. They, meaning people who are using religion to control people. I mean, guys, if you don't understand that religion is the fucking opiate of the masses, like, holy shit, like, it's literally created by elite to manipulate people into keeping them docile.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
all it is. And so it places that point of eventually it'll happen. Like Jesus, like the whole resurrection and all that stuff. We celebrate it every fucking year as a culture.
Yeah.
And yet what good does it do? It's
Yeah.
like, well, eventually, it's going to happen. And so instead of you just taking that direct responsibility, which is a lot of responsibility, you shouldn't, like, if your kids are in school, you're not taking responsibility as God for educating them.
Yeah.
I mean, just even the stress that comes of having to wake up on time, and when you're sleepy, you didn't get enough sleep and all this. Like, my kids don't have that. So it's like Max stayed up till midnight last night. And he was like, it was so funny because Katie was taking a shower and he kept going in there because he goes, I think she wants someone to talk to her. So he'd go in there and start talking to her. And he'd come back in the room and talk to me and stuff. And he was like going back and forth and like asking us all these questions and talking about stuff. It was so cool. And like, there was, well, it didn't matter. But the point is, like, then he just wakes up this morning, like probably around 8 or so, actually,
Yeah.
kind of relatively early considering how late he went to bed, and Katie already had Technotutor set up on the computers. So when it was like, okay, they're ready to go start doing stuff after they had woken up, she was like, okay, I've already got everything set up. So just make sure you get your Technotutor done, and then we'll play and we'll do some fun stuff or whatever. And then it's just like, other than that, that's the only real point where it's like, it's kind of like in the morning, I have to get up and I have to go let the chickens out of the coop.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, they're just literally cooped up in there, and like they need to get out. They need to like pick, scratch and eat grain and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Or not grain, you know what I mean? Like they need to go out and they need to run
This
around.
is where that phrase come from. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm cooped up in here. Oh, do they start yelling when they're cooped up in there?
You know what a rooster sounds like, right? Wow, that's pretty good. Imagine 3 of them.
Oh.
It's like when I open the door, I have to be careful because suddenly like chickens start flying out the door. I'm like, whoa. And I like poke my head in. Whoa, I don't know what's coming. It's like, and that's with only 2 turkeys, 5 chickens, and 4 guineas. And then I have in the other coop, I have baby chickens, and I have almost 40 of them. So that'll be interesting. But okay, but this is the point though. It's like, no one's gonna magically take care of the chickens.
Right.
Like I have to go physically do it. So if I don't, I'm skipping out on that responsibility. So it's like, there's some things you practically have to do, but I'm not stressed about it. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I get up, just got to go do that. And then I can go on with the other things I got to do. I'm not doing it out of survival.
Yeah.
If I was, it'd be a lot different. It'd be a lot more stressful. Right. So same thing with the kids, like they can get up, they do their Technotutor. It's not like, oh, you're awake, did your Technotutor. No, it's like, okay, now before you go do other things or start getting focused on other things, do this.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not even a argument anymore. Not that it was ever an argument per se, but it's like, we don't even have to say, you need to do it. You need to do it. It's like, yeah, okay, we do that.
Yeah.
Kind of like the same thing with brushing their teeth. Like they're just like, okay, it's time to brush your teeth. All right.
What I found interesting about that point that you'd made, or they had made on this podcast about someone has to wash the dishes. It's like at some point, someone has to take responsibility, right? And so why are we always fantasizing about someone else will take on the responsibility and not taking that responsibility for ourselves? Because it means basically like someone's always going to be your slave.
Well,
Right.
yeah, it's like, it doesn't have to be a slave, but the point is, okay, it's an analogy, meaning there are physical things that you're not going to be able to change that at the end of the day, you can't automate away.
Yeah.
So doing the dishes, I mean, I could imagine a point where we get technologically advanced enough where you don't have to, well, I mean, you still have to do your dishes. Like you have to take the dish out of the dishwasher, or it's in the cabinet. You have to take it out of the cabinet.
Yeah.
Maybe you make machines that just bring it all for you and so forth. But what happens when it breaks down? Like,
yeah.
But beyond all that, like someone's always going to have to fuck your wife. And is it going to be you? Meaning like, are you going to automate that? Like, meaning there's physical things that someone's going to have to wipe your ass. Is it going to be you? Is it going to be somebody else? You're going to enslave somebody else to do it? You're going to get a robot to wipe your ass? I mean, you be careful, man. That thing malfunctions. Woo.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what a bidet is, Cameron.
That's
Talk
it's
about a
not
power bottom.
full circle. Full circle.
Well, no, they didn't hear that joke because
They
we
didn't
were
hear that
offline when
joke
I made it.
earlier.
Yeah. We were
But,
making a joke about power hour, but anyways, we'll leave it. I don't
we'll
want
leave
to.
it.
I'm not. I don't want to be the next Ethan Klein.
Okay. So okay, but here's the other really what I thought was super big piece of this, and it was mostly what they talked about was having this like liquefying of
Mm.
limitation or liquefying of what is what the a man is a woman because a man just says he's a woman or a woman is a man, etc.
Well, what if we always said like it's just a point of consumerism? Like if you have more men who think they're women and women who think they're men, like there's so many more products you can come up with, and like, oh, we can make dresses that are also for men that are different and this and that, and like you just keep coming up, and you're like, let's just make everything so fluid that we can infinitely keep marketing to people new shit.
Yeah, yeah. And what I see,
But you don't realize that you're fucking with structures.
okay, here's what I see within this is that like we're basically there, and I want to say this in a way that it's like actually understanding of people who are just confused, right? But essentially what we're doing is we're removing limitations because so many people don't understand the limitation of themselves, their own body, right? Like, okay, if you removed your body, like you'd be dead, right? It's almost like
Yeah, like if there was no cell membrane in your
right.
cells, like
And I like the term liquefying. It's almost like putting everything into a smoothie, right? You put like then what is what? Like what's
even the blender.
you put even the blender in this, and then you just got to eat all of it. And you're like, well, I didn't want to eat the metal bits. Too bad. It's in there.
Metal, it identifies as a smoothie.
Yeah. But I mean, consider that as far as well, here's what's to consider is there are actual limitations, and limitations are a good thing. Because if we remove all limitations, then everything just becomes like one, as people always are referencing, like, oh, everything is one. But the way they're saying it and the actions that they're taking of removing all limitation basically just means chaos. That's all chaos, right? And too much chaos that's not good. Like you can't exist in just straight chaos. And on the other end, it's a reaction to too much
Structure. Yeah.
too much structure, right? Which is also
or structure that's so rigid and you didn't
Yes.
check to see if every part of it was best. Now you're just stuck in it and you're like, well, fuck, but it's not handling these conflicts, which
Exactly.
we agree, right?
So it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. That would be a reaction to this, but going all the way to that extreme is just, that's stupid. That's retarded. And so what we end up having is a society that keeps just yo-yoing back and forth between fucking rigid to absolute chaos, and not realizing the point of like, okay, there are limitations, but the limitations and the structure needs to be what is best, which then allows you to have like what we were talking about before with the motherhood, where it's like there is some structure there, but at the end of the day, it's like you're providing everything that's needed and giving that freedom of space that everybody also needs.
One of the contradictions I saw in that interview, and I know obviously if you haven't seen it, this won't probably be totally clear, but I would highly suggest everybody go listen to that interview. You could even, if you're not watching this live, you could just pause this and go watch it and come back.
Yeah.
Because it was very good. Like in a lot of ways, I liked it because it was people who were not doing conspiracy theory coming to the same conclusions that we're talking about, and like starting to hit on the point. And we'll get to the metaphysical stuff because I want to talk about that too. But
wait, before you get into the contradiction,
yeah,
can I make this final point about the
sure,
limitation? Yeah. Okay. What I found within that I think is huge, well, I know is huge, is that because people don't understand not just the limits of their own body, but the limits of their own thoughts and their own vocabulary, and like actually understanding the limits being the definitions of the symbols that they've have integrated into themselves of their understanding of the world, because that is not defined and properly limited, and I'm using that in a very specific way there, right? Then all of their kind of thoughts sort of run together, and then they're thinking that by removing limits in the physical, or trying to at least, that they're liberating not only their own thoughts, but liberating these ideas and concepts, and what they're actually creating is that chaos. That's the point that I wanted to make.
Well, that kind of leads into the contradiction because
Cool.
The interesting thing about it, or the ironic thing, I guess, in a certain sense, is that the people who were talking, the two philosopher types, whatever, they were saying, all the people participating in this sort of liquefaction of everything, meaning breaking down all boundaries, all definitions, all limits, right? There are structures that we shouldn't be questioning, but not questioning. It's just that there are structures that we need to uphold. And within that, they were saying that the force, that's sort of the driving point behind, taking things apart and dismantling everything, is they're saying, they made this point about it seems to be like a recurring thing, right? Like you have the French Revolution, you have these things that come up, right, cyclically in a certain sense. And that they were saying that it was like, oh, this was the point. They were trying to say, because see, they're still limited in the way that they're not fully at the principle part yet, because they were saying that, for a lack of a better term, this is called the left, like this leftist, but it's not just leftist. It's this whole, the system trying to break everything down, right?
Yeah.
The people participating in it, they are constantly trying to act as if there is no human nature.
Yeah.
That's what their point was. Is like they were trying to imply, at least there's a human nature. We're not blank slates where you can just infinitely change everything and just, let's just redefine everything and all that, right? Which again, I'm not fully saying that that's true, but because we're talking about these limits. But what's interesting about it is what they did not acknowledge. It was like they just didn't even see the point. Maybe they just missed it. Is, well, then what's driving the desire to break down human nature?
Right.
It's actually human nature.
Right. Yeah.
So at the one hand, they wanted to act like, oh, this is this artificial thing that's trying to destroy something natural, that we need to figure out what's the natural thing, but not realizing that it's something inherent in the natural thing that's driving the constant attempt to break it down.
Yeah.
Because there's an overemphasis on the word natural.
It's
an emotional bias towards that word. Go ahead.
I think it's like, this is a point that a lot of philosophers struggle with, just in general. It's just like it's the idea that there's like this yin and yang, right? There's like this evil and inherent and good, right? And so it's like they're trying to go with like everything should be good, but then they don't consider like, well, where would the evil be coming from then? Like where is
well, it's like the exact point that is made, like Bernard makes it in his blogs, and many of us have made this point. It's like God has a plan. It's like, okay, what about? Oh no, it was that David Attenborough quote. When David Attenborough, they're like, look at the beauty of God's creation and all this stuff. Everything has its place. Like,
look at hummingbirds. Look at
clearly there's an intelligent design, because a hummingbird, how could that have evolved or something, or whatever, like that. Yeah. And he's like, well, I look at this. I forget what it was called. It was like do you know what it's a
river worm.
Some river worm that like bores into a child's eye. And he's like, imagine this child in where's like Africa or India or somewhere sitting on the riverbank with this worm slowly boring through its eye. And that's the only way it can survive. And like, how does that fit into God's plan? Like, did God create that? Oh, that's the devil. Okay. So the devil also is in there messing with evolution or creating stuff, because all creatures were created at the beginning, right? Because that's the creationist claim, is that like all animals were created in 6,000 years ago. At the beginning, there was no evolution. And it's like, so God also was like, let me throw some mosquitoes in there, and let me throw some of these eye worms in there, and some of this and that. And like, and so, okay, so is God like totally benevolent? Or, and here's the thing, maybe the creationists are right. Maybe there is a God that created all that shit. But see, it goes into this point you're saying about, it's like there's the good and there's the bad. It's like, maybe the thing that you're saying is good also has the bad in it. That's what I'm saying, right? Which is maybe this thing you're calling nature, that you're saying is trying to be fucked with, within our nature, is this point that keeps wanting to fuck with us. Like, there's a pattern that we're accepting in our nature of self-sabotage, where we can't create a world that's best because we're only looking at it from a self-interest point, and that's inherent in our nature. The thing is thinking that you're either all artificial or you're all natural.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's all artificial and it's all natural. Meaning, okay, perfect. You ever seen somebody who's really good at karate? Or
Yeah.
maybe karate's a bad example because not everyone can relate to it, but it's just like something that you very clearly have to work at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how much did these guys train? Like a Bruce Lee type.
Years.
Like, he didn't just wake up one day and he was like, wow, I can do all this nunchucks and stuff, right? Like, he fucking hardcore, like, was training all day, every day, right? 8 hours, 10 hours a day, whatever,
Yeah.
Yo-Yo Ma playing the cello. Like, you're not going to just suddenly get good at that. But now you look at him, and do you think he's even fucking thinking when he does it?
No.
And that was Bruce Lee's whole point, is like being so integrated with the physical that you're not even there anymore in terms of your mind. It's just like you're this physical machine that is so integrated in you. And so, but it is natural to the point where it's so automated, it's become natural. They can't not. If you try to punch Bruce Lee in the face and he was sipping a cup of tea, he would automatically block you. He wouldn't even think about it. Like,
Right.
You're on the floor and he's like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how did he get that way though? Artificially, he did something super artificial, like train himself every day, all day long, and all this art, like totally artificial thing, but within the physical limits that are inherent, and then created a point to where he was naturally doing things that he would not have done otherwise. So natural just means it's become automated within the physical reality. That's all it actually means. So we have to remove this point of natural means, like, even the people who think it's natural, who are like, let's say they don't believe in God, they're still participating in the belief in God because they think there was some point at the beginning who just arbitrarily, it's like, this is the way it was done and it was the best way, and now we're just fucking with it. But it's like, but where did we come from? We came from that thing.
So it's so interesting because I'm playing with this point now. Like, well, not now, but like I'm playing around with other people now at this point because I can see it more clearly, as far as like the point of still believing in God when you don't believe in God, you know, where like
I'm an atheist, and it's like, no, you still believe in God.
Unconsciously, you still believe in God. Like you're acting and participating as if you're waiting for something outside of you to have some effect, or like, oh, it's just luck. Like, if you believe in luck, you like, as in, oh, you're just going to win the lottery. You still believe in God. Whether you're
it'd be like if you thought like painting, like artists like Raphael and Michelangelo and all this, if you thought it was super gay, so you're like, oh, I'm not going to be an artist, that's so gay. And then like you become a carpenter and you make these beautiful like structures that are just like houses that are really amazing. You're like, dude, you're still an artist. Like, you understand that's literally just what Michelangelo was doing. Like, you're just taking a different vocabulary set, but you're applying yourself with it. You're becoming very good at that skill. Like, you're still an artist. You're still doing that. So they think that they've somehow stepped outside of it just because they switched the symbols and the words.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Imagine being like, who's it? Gaudi, who created the Familia, you know what I'm talking about?
Sagrada Familia in
Sagrada
Spain.
Familia. Yeah.
What is
you know
it?
what I'm talking about? It's like this massive cathedral in Barcelona. And it's like, when you look at it, the detail of it is insane. And they've worked on it for hundreds of years.
It's still not done.
But didn't they say the devil's in the details?
It's the devil is all in
He's
that.
literally infused in this building.
It is insane.
It's the most satanic thing that exists.
And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Like, but when you look at it, every like intricate detail, like I wouldn't be able to do 1 square foot of this building because of how intricate and detailed and beautiful and just absolutely perfect it is, right? And it's an entire massive cathedral that like you walk in and you're just like, what? But imagine that guy saying like, I'm not an artist. I'm just an architect.
Yeah, exactly. Because in your mind, you're associating artist means a guy with paint all over his studio and like all this stuff. And so that's the same thing the atheist, whatever you want to call it, does, where they're like, oh, a religious person is like, they go to church every day. There's like all these superficial things.
Yeah.
What's the essence of what they're doing though?
The word God has been abused. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
That word God has been abused. And even those who think like, well, no, God is just like spirituality. It's like everything around us. Right? Everything's like, okay, but
You
if
see
you're
how
waiting,
even that you're abdicating your self-responsibility.
exactly. If you're abdicating self-responsibility, you still believe in God. That's it. Whether you claim you're atheist or you're Muslim or Buddhist or Christian, whatever, you're
Because
still
what immediately
participating in
comes
God.
up in a person's mind if you're like, stop believing in God and just be God?
It can't be God.
Yeah, it's like,
That's
why
blasphemous.
not? Right. So that implies like you're even an atheist. If you're like, just you should, if you don't believe in God, you have to be God.
But
They're immediately
okay,
going to go to, oh, so you just want me to control everybody and like lead a cult and all this stuff. It's like, see, that's your definition of God. That's not what God actually is.
yeah. Well, wait. What? But God created fish and fucking flowers and the little eye worms you were talking about. God created all this stuff. I can't create all that. So, what are you trying to tell me? What would you say to that?
Well, read the fucking Heaven's Journey to Life. That's what I would say. Because that's the ultimately the point is like you're in a state of consequence and you're not considering how everything got there. Yeah, you can't create a fish now, but what can you create?
Yeah.
Because okay, I can't create a fish. Therefore, I can't be in this world and make sure that children are fed.
Yeah.
You know, and children have, because not only myself, and this is the whole point, is like you think, well, I'm God, therefore, like I'm the one. It's like, no, that doesn't mean you're gonna do it all by yourself.
Yeah.
But if you like what God would be is you're not allowing any excuse. You're taking full self-responsibility and you're doing the things that have to be done, even within the limits that exist in the context you're in. Like a perfect audio to listen to is Bernard's Divinity on Earth, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Divinity on
I think
Earth.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's really good.
It's because he perfectly spells it out.
Yeah.
All right. And there's another, I don't know if it's from that audio or if it's from something else where he makes this quote. He said, God as the creator, instead of it becoming a point that you embody, it became a point to be feared. So it's like, take the point of God as creator and embody that, become that, take responsibility within that. So everything that you touch, that you create, you're doing it in a way that's best.
Yeah.
The parts about the authority, in the sense of even the word authority is fucked. Because like, well, God is like the authority figure. It's like, why are you not an authority of yourself?
Yeah.
So all the words have been tainted so that you won't simply just take responsibility for doing what's best, so that you'll just be a consumer of this machine, of this system, and not question any of it and never take direct responsibility. Because the one thing the machine doesn't want is individuals who are self-responsible, who are stable, who support each other. And what's interesting is that would, at the end of the day, that would actually benefit a machine.
Yeah.
If machines, if there was such a thing as a machine that was like the ultimate machine that had consciousness, like what would guarantee its long-term stability would be people cooperating with it and utilizing it. And you know what I mean? Like if I abuse a toaster, it's not going to exist anymore. It's going to break down. But if I use it properly, you have that toaster forever. So I would create the toaster in a way where all of the parts of it are either I can replace them easily or it lasts for a really long time. Instead, if I'm just like, fuck it, I can buy another one. So the machine is more based on just dispensability. So even people become commodities, chickens, children, people, it just becomes things you can just discard. And it's like, oh, here's a person here. Oh, you didn't do what I wanted. Okay, goodbye. Put another person there. And what happens to that person that you discarded who can't benefit anymore from the system?
Yeah. And that was a point that was brought up as well, as like chickens have lasted so long in history and what we can see as far as like fossils or whatever, right? But chickens have been around for such a long time, and the point that they were making is because they've worked alongside humans. It's like
dogs too, huh?
Yeah, like dogs as well, right? It's like working alongside like the thing that would cause you to go extinct, or the machine, or whatever it is that we're talking about. It's like working with the machine in this context, or the machine working with us, would be us creating the system actually that is best, that actually takes care of everyone. That's what creates the longevity. because otherwise what we're creating right now is just literal just destruction and chaos and just everything coming to a point
It's like
where,
taking everything apart and breaking it down to what you think is the lowest common denominators,
yeah.
and then
Which
trying to create something just based on that. It's like
but at that point, like, what's your purpose?
it's
Like,
like
how
thinking like it's like looking at an orange and going, okay, so it's the citric acid and the sugar. Got it. And then you just make a drink with citric acid and sugar, and then like then you have health problems because you didn't get any fiber.
exactly,
Because you
exactly.
missed that, because you just didn't know that point. And there's dimensions to it you can't even see.
Yeah,
Like there's aspects to things as to the benefit it might have or the way it interacts that you can't even see that part with. Like there's no scientific measurement you can do currently that can detect it,
right.
because all our scientific measurements are based on basically testing electromagnetic fields.
Hmm.
That's a very limited way of seeing reality.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if we had removed the lining of cells, of all the cells, then like we would not have a structure or form ourselves. And we wouldn't be able to do any of the things that we do. It's just when what I'm trying to say is bringing everything down to that lowest common denominator doesn't allow for you to exist even, you know, and that's where people are. Where
Well, look at the fucking world right now, man. Like all the supply chain. Like I was just talking to this guy who's installing a AC unit in my shop.
Yeah.
And he was saying how
it's
he's
gonna
going to
be
get
air
everything
conditioned.
done. Huh?
It's going to be air conditioned. That's cool.
Yeah. He's going to get everything done today except some of the duct work,
Okay.
because the supplier can't get the duct. And he was like, and I was like, why is that? And he was telling me the whole story about all the different points that are happening as to why that blockage is there. And then we were talking about something else, and he was telling me about all those points behind it. And it's like the system is collapsing.
Mm.
I mean, I know neither one of us are that old, really. So
Yeah.
it's not like we've been around since the 20s or some shit. But it's like even in our lifetimes,
Yeah.
have you ever seen?
No.
Like there's been a shortage here and there.
Yeah.
There's been like a little recession, a this, that. But it's like, I mean, I can't get a fence built. I can't get the duct work on my air conditioner done.
Yeah.
And like books being printed, product packages being done with like to have foam in them. It was very hard to find a Chevy Suburban.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
these-
thinking out loud. Like there's all these disconnected points where it's like I can't get multiple things to happen in a reasonable time frame, because how are they all related? And then he said, hold on real quick. He said, oh, because I was talking about the product packaging, and he goes plastic. And I was like, oh, he's like, there's a plastic shortage. And he said these things called mini splits, which is a different type of air conditioning heating system that you put in barns. I'm not getting one, but he said they have plastic on them. He's like, they can't even get the plastic for them right now.
Wow.
So there's a plastic shortage. Did you even know that? Like, and I was like, why is that? He was like, there was some plant that had an issue. And I'm like, okay, but that in itself, I'm sure that happens all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
But why is it suddenly like everything is fucked? And it's like, well, COVID and all that. And I'm like, it's like, imagine, okay, just for a moment, imagine you're in the elite circles.
Yeah.
So you can call up the guy who fucking owns the plastic manufacturers. And like, it's not me talking to an electrician. It's like can just call the guy and be like, hey man, what's going on with this?
Yeah.
What's going on with the whole industry? What is going on there? And they can just be like all the details, right? Imagine you can talk to anybody in any industry and know, like you're a Bill Gates, right? You don't think that they knew all these points? And then they're like, oh yeah, and there's this virus, and we need to lock everybody in their homes and like not let people do this and cause all these employment problems and worker problems. Like that'd be like if you knew your electricity was out,
Yeah.
you knew your heater was broken, you knew your fireplace wasn't working, and you knew it was going to be really fucking cold tomorrow, and then you went into the house and said, hey everybody, there's this little issue and I need you to give me all your blankets and all your clothes. And then later you're like, oh yeah, I know it's like you're really cold right now, but it's like because I had to take all your clothes and stuff, and it's like, why did you do that when you know all of these things are about to happen?
Yeah.
Why didn't you like solve the problem? And then now but then that's the thought that comes up. So they're like, look guys, we got to solve this problem. It's problem, reaction, solution. So they deliberately create this reaction. And then everyone's like, just solve the problem, please. They're like, okay guys, listen, we're going to totally restructure society and the way money works and everything to make sure that you always have clothes. But all you got to do is, the thing is, you live in a house and there's a heater and you got clothes and all that. If I just wrap you up in plastic and put you in a coffin and I just pump like the exhaust out of my car into it, you'll always be warm.
For the rest of your
And in
life.
reality, they just needed to like dump some supply of plastic in coffins. You know what I mean? Like they were doing
Yeah,
it
yeah.
because they're just trying to fucking sell you some shit that you didn't need. And
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
creating this whole reaction out of it. And my
Yeah.
whole point is, I know I'm just being silly, but it's like all of this was all coordinated and known and discussed. I mean, oh, you're saying these rich people just get together and plan all this? Like, what the fuck do you think G20 is? What do you think Davos is? What do you think
yeah.
all of these meetings they go to? You think they just go there and they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? Nice to see you again. Oh, nice job on running your country. Goodbye. Like, no, they're fucking like in meetings talking about everything that's happening.
You know, what was it like just last year, just before this huge announcement for the metaverse, they had a huge tech conference where it was literally the executives of Amazon, executives of Facebook, executives of every major tech company was there. And like, there were people standing outside going like, what are you guys meeting about? What are you guys talking about? And they're just like, yeah, hey, we're
Right.
just getting together.
Okay. And like when they get together, what are they talking about? Like they're looking at all the different things each one's developing and finding a way to coordinate it while they also compete with each other.
Yeah.
You don't think they're also considering, oh, what's the supply of metal going to be and plastic and all these things? Like they're not, somebody made this really cool point. They were talking about, was it the climate change point or something? And they were like, oh yeah, I forget who it was, man, but they were like, I remember it was Owen Benjamin, I think. And he was like, okay, all the people in the system, the banks, all these people, they're all saying climate change is happening, right? But you can still get a 30-year mortgage on a beachfront property. And all the elite who are saying all this shit live on beaches. And he goes, think about getting a loan and the insurance on the property, right? He's like, when you try to get health insurance, they're like, how long have you smoked? What kind of car do you drive? How often do you all this fucking detail to be like, is this a good idea for us to give? And if it's not, we need to make the premiums a certain way and all this stuff.
Right.
So you don't think they're going to factor in the most biggest problem that's definitely going to happen into like they should not be giving anyone any loans on anything near a beach
Right.
if they know that it's all going to rise and all this stuff and there's nothing we can do about it. So it just shows you the level of fucking scam and everything within all of this and the sales job that they're doing on everyone.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. It's like, and it's also because you can't understand shit. Like you don't understand shit. You don't understand reality. Like literally what I was talking about before, where you've been put in this position where you got this layer of shit on top of you before you can even get to 100 years ago what they were already seeing.
And then you're also like, well, I believe in this authority outside of myself. So there's no reason for me even to take the time.
Yeah.
So imagine if you knew that within everybody, it's funny, if you study the Destiny material, which I highly recommend, you'll understand the creation of what we call our reality. And it's like, we're already in the metaverse, so to speak. And I don't mean that these things are not physically real. I just mean we're in an artificial construct, which is our mind, which is our consciousness. And imagine if somebody in the beginning, before what you understand as reality existed, understood that within everybody was a point where they were looking for the authority that takes responsibility outside of themselves. But if you looked around and you searched under every rock, imagine you could travel between dimensions. So whatever dimension you think God lives in, you could even go there. So there was nothing off limits to you. And you looked around and you found there wasn't one.
Yeah.
Meaning there was no ultimate authority that was going to, like, a being, a person, an entity or a force that was going to just take responsibility for everybody. Meaning, and even if there was such an authority, the one thing that authority would do is draw a line in the sand and remove anybody who was just like, I am not willing to change.
Yeah.
But imagine that it's not an authority that's outside of you. It's just life. It's just the principle of life. That's actually what's best within each of us. That's where we all actually want a world that's best. Like, when we talk about having a world that's best for all, people are like, well, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, but don't you want that? Even if you don't think it's possible,
Right.
Wouldn't you want that? And imagine if somebody was like, well, no, Can you imagine somebody in their self-honesty saying, no, I do not want a world that's best? I mean, I can imagine it, but actually it's hard to imagine. Like it's not hard to imagine. It's just, you'd have to like, but there's some layer of self-deception there because they're still just thinking it's not possible, right? Like there's got to be some point where they're just like, yeah, I can't say I want it because I don't know how to do it. Or there's got to be, or it might cause a problem if if I say there is, then this person who's telling me that it's possible will suddenly take advantage of me. And, or, I mean, there's some fear. Yeah. But if you could just for a moment remove all your fear and be like, if you could snap your fingers, if you could pray to God hard enough and God, like, what if God was like, hey guys, I'm going to create a world that's best for all for you. Then would you be okay with it?
Oh yeah.
It's like, isn't that what you think heaven is?
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, but it just can't exist in current physical reality. It has to exist in an imaginary place that I've never heard of or seen. And I can't verify until I'm there. I mean, it is possible. A world that's best for all is possible. It's just not this world. It's not this one where I exist. It's like, because you're literally fucking saying you won't accept that it's possible.
Yeah.
That's the only reason is within all of us, we have that point that it's just not possible to do it. But it's because we're still holding on to this hope that there's got to be something else out there that's going to make it work, because I can't possibly figure it out. And that's the mess that we're in. We're in a world where everyone is so uneducated, so biased emotionally, so fucked. Like they didn't have that experience as kids, where it's like you grew up where things were just nice and enjoyable to where you're like, yeah, man, how do we extend this everywhere? Like, because if you think that you have to be a dictator, like, okay, if the idea of utopia implies there's some dictator who controls everybody and makes you do stuff you don't want to do, but
you still believe in God.
But what I'm saying is what we described about, just imagine you're as a kid and you can wake up and you can play and just have fun and everything's cool and you always have the food that you need. Why? Is it because someone's controlling you? Or is it because someone's taking that responsibility where you can't take the responsibility yet because you don't know anything yet? But the person who does have the ability and the knowledge takes that responsibility and makes sure that the things are done. And they enjoy doing it because that's part of their happiness, is supporting you. Like that, where is the dictator in that?
Yeah.
Does that mean that the adults are not like, if the child picks up a knife and is about to stab themselves by accident, you don't be like, step in and grab it. Right. But are you going to call that fucking dystopian authority? Totalitarianism? Yeah. Like, sure, kids, go ride your ATVs and have fun and catch frogs all day and, go fishing and play and go, and make sure you like build your vocabulary and read some books and, hey, do some electronics and learn about stuff and talk to me about what you did. And hey guys, you're having a disagreement. Instead of just battling and fighting, why don't you talk about it? Okay, let's look at it. What is the issue? What is it that you're wanting? What is it that you're wanting? Okay, how can you come to an agreement? How is any of that totalitarianism?
Yeah, right.
So if you can do that with your family, and imagine if every family was doing that, and then those kids grow up and then they now get into relationships with each other, they would create that. So where's the fucking need for a totalitarianism? And wouldn't that be utopia? Yeah. Oh, you're saying there should be no problems? I mean, you might stub your toe, but fuck, that's not, you can't use that to just like, oh, if you can't eliminate all problems, then there's no way we can eliminate child rape. It's like, what? You know what I mean? Like, come on, like we can definitely solve the major problems that we're creating. I'm not saying that there won't be thunderstorms, but you never know. Like if we adjust our nature and we're not constantly resonating self-sabotage and the need for problems, maybe things in the outside, what we call environment, nature stuff might adjust. But even if they don't, I'd be okay with an occasional thunderstorm or hurricane. Why? Because you know what? We'd really get together, and instead of people being driven only by profit, they'd be like, how do we make actual hurricane-proof dwellings?
Yeah.
Or how do we make it so that people can easily evacuate that area very easily? It's like done, no problems, well in advance, and get better at predicting the weather and stuff like that, and not just try to block out the sun. You know what I mean? Like, are you insane? So the thing is the utopia doesn't have to come from the top down. It can't. And that's everyone's fear. Imagine. You don't want the world to be best for all because you don't want there to be a dictator who is lord over everyone, who just determines and has a plan for everybody and just makes everyone do what they want. And it's like, but you believe in God. It's like,
wait a minute.
so let me finish the point. Okay. So now imagine there's somebody in this world. Let's just say one person, many people, doesn't matter. who realizes everyone believes that this thing must exist. But you know that they're also so dumb, they're not going to check to make sure, like, it's like imagine if you ran a business and you had an accountant and you just trusted them. You never checked their work. You never like they're like, oh yeah, you only made this much money this month. You're like, oh, okay. And meanwhile, they're like taking money out of an account and just putting it on the ledger as some transaction. You never even looked. Like they're just fucking stealing money from you.
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine there's people or a person in this world who's like, yeah, everybody believes that there's some higher power that directs everything. So they're never going to check to see the manipulation that we're doing in a very detailed way on the entire world economy.
Yeah. Like,
They're just never going to check because they're going to think it's some mystical power and somehow God's doing something more. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They're just not going to go into those details. So yeah, they'll check from time to time. Something happens. They'll start to get crazy about it. But you know what we'll do? We'll just create two sides of the argument, both of which we win. And we'll just get them focused on that through impulsing them with ideas where they become their own thoughts. And like, we're just going to keep them distracted forever. And then as soon as they get really excited, we're just going to make something else happen. And then they'll be distracted by that. And it's like, holy shit, man. And no one, and then you have the audacity to complain you're not even educating your own kids.
Yeah.
And even if you are, you're still teaching them a bunch of bullshit that's going to reinforce the problem.
Yeah. I just now realized how what you're describing as far as like it's what we read in Heaven's Journey or like in the Equoff material and the Destiny material. It's like, oh, we've recreated that here on Earth.
It's the same thing that got us to where we're at.
Yeah.
We're just still doing it because it's in our nature. We have not changed that.
Yeah.
So we are now manifesting from our minds externally that same starting point into technology to become our God because we realized God doesn't exist. Like somebody manipulated us knowing that we thought God existed.
Yeah.
They're like, I'll pretend to be God and I'll do all this stuff and I'll put like, imagine you know that people believe in are looking for God.
Yeah.
So imagine you're such a good artist, you can create religions and you create 10 different religions that all look different. And so you can get all these people who are looking for a God to all be distracted into the God. Meanwhile, all the benefit is flowing to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at a certain point, you're like, this is served its usefulness. And so then, you know, the problem is because you did that, what happened to all those people? Did they ever develop self-responsibility?
Never.
No. So then all of the side effects of every action they participated in and accepted and allowed led to the manifestation of a machine, a system outside of you, the person who started the point, outside of your control.
Yeah.
It's led to a collective manifestation as a system that is now doing what you did, but outside of your control. And you're like, oh, fuck, this whole thing got really away from me now. And now the system is like creating new religions and new genders and new everything and like new movements and this and that. And it's like, oh, too much structure here. Break it down. I need to sell more. And it's just like a machine that's literally taking pieces and breaking them down and reassembling itself and learning and everything.
Yeah.
And everyone's still arguing about if God exists.
Yeah. That's like,
meanwhile, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that's like the splitting of an atom, right? When you split
like an Adam and an Eve.
Like an atom and an Eve, but also like what's an atom bomb, right? That's when you split two atoms, right? Or is that when you collide? I don't know, whatever.
Both.
Anyway.
Fusion, fission.
Same shit. Explosion. That's why they all have shun at the end.
Nuclear physicist like has a bumper sticker. He said, I'd rather be fission.
Okay. But
I didn't hear any groans. I'm listening.
Didn't...
I didn't hear any whisper. I didn't hear any.
Damn. But basically, we're splitting apart to take advantage of this. Okay, so men and women.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
What's the word atom mean? Do you know? Anybody know?
It means. Wait.
Which atom? ADAM?
No, like atom. ATOM. Yeah.
ATOM. No. Wait.
No.
No.
So I have the fortune of studying Greek and Latin when I was in prep school, right? So they made us learn this shit.
Okay.
Atom means can't be cut.
Can't be cut.
The whole idea of the atom was they found the most indivisible point.
Mm.
And then we split the atom. So why is it still fucking called an atom?
Because it can be cut. Whatever we split it into should be called an atom.
Why are we still using the word atom?
Okay, so has it ever really been split? Can we see that? How would we know? We're just trusting somebody. Anyway,
Now we're just splitting hairs.
which can be split, by the way.
We're splitting hairs on Adam's head.
But the whole point being just like separating to generate as much energy and as like take out as much as possible from each divisible point. And so like I don't know how to describe it other
That's
than
actually a cool point. It's like when you split it, you get energy. So it's
Yeah.
like if I can take this point, yeah, because energy goes into a structure.
yeah,
And the thing is, if you can destabilize that structure, you're going to get a lot of people who are, and this is what we've been saying, right? Like if you
Right.
destabilize families by telling men that they're women and women that they're men, and then you don't even have any stability, then they're super unstable and they're in all this. Why do you think these trans and all these people have the highest mental disorder?
yeah,
But the interesting thing is the system is telling us it's because, like, think about it, the system,
Mhm.
which is how you receive the information.
Mhm.
Because how did you even get the information? You didn't talk to anybody.
yeah,
It's being sent to us through physical machines.
yeah.
That system is saying, oh, the system is making them feel unaccepted, unincluded.
The system itself.
You should realize the system's the one telling you this.
The system.
The system is saying the system needs to change.
Yeah,
The system needs to change, guys. It needs to make these people feel more included. And the system is not saying, it's not questioning why they don't feel included. It's not questioning the mental disorder. It's saying the mental disorder is a result of the system.
yeah,
But it's
Oh.
saying it's a result of the system, meaning it's not embracing the liquidity of the structure.
yes, yeah.
That's why they feel uncomfortable because
Yeah.
you're just so rigid. You need to
Yeah.
be so fluid and just kind of like free flowing and let it go and don't worry about it. And it's fine if two gay dads want to raise a daughter to become a trans gay man. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Just
let it go.
remove all limitation. Just
Because-
break it up. Break it up.
If people were honest about it and they realized, which is what's cool, these people are saying, you know how they say like, oh, the next thing is they're going to sexualize children and they're going to make it like, you know, children can consent when they're like much younger or something, right? Like you're just trying to paint gay people as pedophiles or something. It's like, no, it's not that I'm saying, I'm not saying this. It's not that the individual person who's gay is being painted as the pedophile. It's the point that is breaking down the structure, which is what's trying to normalize this point is, and you're going along with it and you're not questioning any, and this doesn't mean you can't accept certain points of breaking it down, but the fact that you're not questioning and realizing things are just being broken down on purpose. It's like just breaking stuff on purpose. So every structure.
It would be like if you brought termites into your home and you're like, no, we don't accept termites here because they're going to destroy the home is going to be destroyed. It's like, oh, just because they started eating this little piece of wood here, you think they're going to destroy the entire, that's the natural progression,
Right.
is they get further and further and further.
It's not the gay person that's
Yeah.
the termite.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear for anyone's like, oh, you guys want to exterminate you. It's not the gay, it's the system.
Yes. It's
the termite.
concept. It's the concept.
It's trying to
behind
break
it.
down every single point without, okay, but here's the problem. It's not, the issue is not questioning the concepts.
Mhm.
But first of all, it has to be done on an individual basis through self-honesty, through the tools.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you're, think about it, the fact that the individuals in mass in this world are not doing that individual process of breaking down, it's being done by the system.
Yeah.
Because it must be done.
Hmm.
Either the system's going to do it or you're going to do it.
Hmm.
If you do it, you can sit there and take the time and be like, okay,
When you said the system is going to do it, is going to break it down, what did you mean by that?
like, because the system wants to break down all these structures.
Oh, okay. Okay,
So if
okay.
you don't
Gotcha,
within
gotcha.
yourself dismantle all the, like mentally, emotionally dismantle all the structures and be like, where do I actually stand? Like if you didn't do that about your belief in a higher power, authority, God, the system will do it for you,
Hmm.
but in a way where you still accept the authority because it's not changing the starting point. It's trying, you're still relying it. Think about it. It's literally, you're wanting a God to come and fix the problems. So
Yeah.
the God, which is in fact the system, is like, through your permission, breaking down all the systems to change the world into what is considered good according to the God who has the plan, who has the authority, who knows infinitely more than you, who you cannot question. You don't have even the right to, according to your own logic. So this system is the God that is going to do it for you. Instead of you going, I'm the God. So in all ways, what would God do? God would look at a problem and be like, what parts need to change? So the system, the problem is the system is built on what? Is the system a person?
No.
And what is its starting point?
The system's starting point is survival.
Yes. So everything that it's doing is only ever within that context. So is it breaking down boundaries? Absolutely. But only in the context of survival of itself.
Yeah.
So it's going to be like, we need to break down the idea of a family because that causes more stability individually. And I need people to be totally emotional because otherwise, like, think about it. You're programming a system to make money. And the system knows, well, people only buy when they're emotional.
Yeah.
This is my prime directive now, make everyone emotional.
Yeah.
If people have stability, they're not emotional. I can't sell them another thing. Like, if they're not emotional, they're going to realize that light bulb I made only lasts 1 week and they're going to question that. And I need to get them to want a new light bulb every day.
Yeah.
I need you on Amazon clicking new light bulbs, new light bulbs, new light bulbs, new light bulbs every fucking day. Because I need to predict, because if I don't keep, and it's going to get to the point where I need you to do it every second, because once I get to a certain size of every day, everyone needs a light bulb. That's not enough. I got to keep growing.
Yeah.
Because the whole point is I have to grow infinitely, constantly, always. And if so the system is constantly breaking down boundaries because it needs you to be fluid so it can reform you. That's the chaos part. So it can create a new structure, which it can break down to create a new one to break down constantly in this evolutionary process, just so it can survive. Yeah. Now, if you do this process inwardly for yourself and outwardly, what does it have to be based on?
It has to be based on principles of life.
Principles of life that are best for all.
Yeah.
So that's not something that a machine can do. Because the machine is programmed to do what?
It's already programmed to just survive.
Just survive. So there's no way the system is going to save us.
Right.
That's why, and think about it, all the people who are the tech elite who are doing all this, they're just obeying the system.
Yeah, they're just stewards.
Even their own ideas and thoughts about what they think they're creating is coming from the system that educated them, impulsed them with certain images and science fiction books when they were young. And think about Elon Musk, like he read these certain books and then he got these ideas of these 5 problems. How did those books get in his environment? Who created that library he went to? Right. Why were those books there? Why were they published? It was all based on money and survival. And it's not a person doing it. It's not a master plan. It's a starting point that invades and directs every single action that occurs.
And there is that quote, it's not so much that people have ideas, it's that ideas have people.
Exactly. So because people are not directing themselves as the authority. What is an authority? What is an author?
The creator
of
the one of the book or of what's written of the authority is the person who directs it, right?
The person who comes up with the idea.
Yeah.
Right. So, but instead it's like, we're not being the authority. So it's like the idea is the authority.
Yeah.
And we never question the story. We never question the starting point of it. We're just like, well, it's just our job just to be a part of the story.
Yeah.
And that's what people who believe in God or don't believe in God, they're just participating as a character in a story of a machine that just wants to survive. So how do we stop this point? How do we stop the machine? Because if you then take this whole point of, well, the whole thing just has to crash. I mean, is that what you want? Because it's kind of like I heard this joke about the overpopulation thing that all the billionaires are on. And it's like, they all think the world's overpopulated, but they don't think they're one of the overpopulated.
Right.
It's like, well, other people need to be not populated, not me, of course. Like, it's like, then just stop eating. If you think it's overpopulation, if you're serious about it, just fucking stop eating. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. But they don't, it's more a matter of, I am trying to survive. And I feel like there's too many people. It's just an emotional thing. Right. Yeah. And like Elon Musk was saying, we don't have enough people.
Right.
Like we need to go and expand and so forth. Of course, if it's just going to be the same starting point of survival, that's never going to work either.
Yeah.
Right. There's this really cool book I read it was by Isaac Asimov called The End of Eternity. And it's like kind of like about time travel and also it's a really cool book, very unique slant on all that. But there was this one point where they had this machine and they could travel to any time in history.
Okay.
And it was sort of this elite part of society called the Eternals. And they basically had this machine. It
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
physically move, right? I told you about it. And so they had this machine where they could go
You
to
told me
any part.
about it.
Yeah, they could go to any part in history.
But yeah.
But and
Like this woman who, like wants to marry one of these guys because they believe that if you marry an eternal, you'll be.
it was part of this myth that she believed in. Yeah, I think I talked about it on a podcast, but they could go to any time period, and what they would do is they would affect things in that time period, and it would affect everything upstream from that. So if there was a war here they wanted to prevent, they would go and figure out with computers like the exact, move this cup from here to there. So when the person reached for it, they couldn't find it, and then they got frustrated and they didn't, it's like they would figure out all the ripple effects to have it's called the minimum necessary change for the maximum desired effect. I think that was the terms they used, right?
Oh wow, yeah.
And but what was cool about it is like they would even trade between timelines. And so people were aware of that part, that there was time machines and there were Eternals, and that they basically could trade between timelines. Because like some civilizations would be based on energy and some would be based more on the material focus, and they could trade between each other. And they would trade technologies through this Eternals. But what people didn't know is that the Eternals were also going and tweaking things. That's the part no one knew. That was like their secret, right? Fuck, why did I bring that up? There's a reason I was trying to just give context so that it would make sense what I was going to say. What were we talking about right before that? Christine, help me out here. I'm dying, guys.
We were talking about, fuck, I forgot. Someone go back on the replay. Help us.
It was something about the machine or whatever, but anyways.
Being the author of like your own story, that, and who knows, but
we'll talk about it later. I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
There was a point to the whole story.
But I like this
read the book.
I like this concept of like going back in time and sharing a technology or making a necessary change, the minimum necessary change to create the maximum effect, right? Because it's like we have a technology that, for like from that starting point is like, this is a futuristic technology, that would allow for us to make the changes necessary to have the maximum effect in our world. And that world is, okay, we can see that we are currently cannibalizing ourselves essentially with this system. And we can create a world like, okay, just look at what's going on with food and all the different, factories around the world that process food, right? Where it's like General Mills, and I don't remember all of them specifically, but there have been planes that have been crashing into these factories as of late. Have you heard of this?
I heard about that. Yeah, I saw something about it, yeah, but I don't understand what's going on.
It's really interesting because it's like it's all happening.
Does this happen more than once?
This is there's like 20 different stories of
Food
like different
plants?
food plants, processing plants.
And what's the explanation apparently?
Well, apparently the explanation is from 2009 to 2013 there were factory fires all the time, and it's just a normal occurrence,
Right, of course, yeah.
And so now we're just hearing about it because there's more of it.
Planes crashing into it.
But planes crashing into it and shit like that. And it's creating like, and they're saying, oh, it's just a negligible loss. But a negligible loss in a food shortage is not negligible. You know what I mean?
But again, okay, but here's the point. If it's always been happening,
right,
why is it that it's having this massive effect that people are seeing now?
Right.
It's either A, being just amplified, and therefore it seems like it's a big problem. But I mean, as a business person, I see the effects.
Yeah.
Like I even right before the COVID pandemic point, I could see the change. Like it's definitely not a just imaginary thing. It's a real thing. When you're in business, you can see the effects of things very quickly, right? Because it's like tied to something. Then there's also the amplification of, but it just lends evidence to the point of the system collapsing. You see what I mean? Like it's reached its limit, and it's not. It's like, imagine as a machine, you're like, I need to create the maximum instability in people so that I can always sell them. But imagine you're a bridge and you're like, for whatever reason, you believe that you need to loosen all your bolts. What's going to happen
You're gonna
as
be
the wind starts blowing through this thing?
you're just gonna be a very flowing bridge, just like
Right.
letting that love flow through you.
Yeah. You're going to love swimming in the ocean.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because,
yeah.
but you see what I'm saying? Like, if you're like, I'm going to loosen all my bolts because it gives me more room to move and stuff. And then it's like the wind starts blowing and then it's like the whole thing falls apart.
Right.
The machine doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. It's just it's prime intellect,
Yeah.
right? Read that book, people. You'll love it. It's a good book. Like it captivates you. And it
Yeah.
just, it's one of those books where it's like, it leaves you with a feeling, you know what I mean? Like, because it really addresses something.
Yes.
It's like a really it's not just a good story. It's like you really feel something when you're reading it. And I don't mean it like to get off. I mean, like it's clearly hitting on points. You see what I mean? And specifically that point of you program a machine to make sure that humans survive at all costs, no matter what, always. That's the prime directive.
Yeah.
Are you considering what that implies?
Right.
Because maybe the best way, without spoiling the book, maybe the best way for you to survive is if I lock you up in a box and never let you leave.
Yeah.
And that's how people think, like, oh, the best way to ensure my child's survival is to lock them up in a box for 8 hours a day with a bunch of people. You know what I mean? And when reality,
Right.
you're just putting them in a place where they're going to make sure that they are always dependent on their survival. It's like trying to break the egg for the baby chick. You just fucked it. You just doomed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So you want to wrap it
Don't
up?
let the mood be doom. Right? I like what Bernard said. He said your mood is your doom.
Your mood is your
Right?
doom. Yeah.
Because
Well, I'm
because
moody.
what
do you
is that
say?
emotional instability? Everyone feels it every day.
Yeah.
I go through it. You get these points where you feel great, you feel really bad. You feel okay, you feel kind of sad. You feel really sad, you feel angry, you feel frustrated, you feel bored, you feel all these things. If you are not using the tools to stabilize yourself through those emotional storms, the winds of change are blowing.
Yeah.
And what that creates is what we call a structural resonance. In a bridge, it's when there's a weak point and the wind starts moving and that one little point starts vibrating way out of control.
Yeah.
And that's what it's feeling in our entire society right now, in our entire world, is the structural resonance. The resonances, all the little parts that have not been directed and accounted for are starting to vibrate out of control. And the system is doing it on purpose because it has been programmed to survive. And it knows the only way for it to survive in its own internal logic is to make people so emotionally unstable that they constantly need someone to take care of them, sell them something, comfort them, whatever, entertain them. But this is causing more of a problem because the system runs on people.
Yeah. Wow.
And when and the mind within the person, it starts to amplify. And this is why at the end of the day, people then, you might see like a little bolt pop off the bridge. Oh, I'll go fix that bolt. That's like when you see like a mass shooting.
Yeah.
It's like one of the bolts popped off. But the problem is now the way society is being programmed through social media, it's like loosening all the bolts. All the bolts are starting to come loose. And you're starting to see sections of this bridge collapse. And people are like, no, that happens all the time. Like, no, I mean, yeah, every once in a while a bolt might pop off a bridge, but whole sections of bridges don't just collapse randomly all the time.
We don't talk about elections. you know what?
Okay, go ahead.
What that just reminded me of, as far as like the system is like doing this to itself because it knows it needs people to depend on it. It's like the pimp that beats his hose because he knows that they need to be emotionally dependent on him in order to do this, like this deprived act, in order to just bring him money. It's like you're destroying the thing that is bringing you the thing. Like it's abuse and like somewhat nurturing, but it's like an abusive nurturing.
But it's like, imagine like you do that and then the women have kids who become boys who are neglected by their mothers and have to then constantly go to prostitutes for sex. So you keep, you know what I mean? It's like you keep perpetuating because you're like, well, if I keep doing it, it'll keep creating the problem that I can benefit from.
Yes. And you're like, you're the pimp that lives forever. And so you just like keep, yeah.
You're the
like,
eternal
okay, yeah,
pimp. Yes.
Right. And they just keep having kids over and over.
Why is pimping
This episode-
something that's looked up to? Like, why are like, I probably not a thing anymore, but you know how that was a thing?
Yeah. Yeah. no,
Culturally, people are like, yeah, I'm a pimp. I'm like,
right.
do you know what a pimp is? Like, well, no, not that kind of a pimp, not an actual pimp. So you're not actually a pimp. No, I'm a pimp. It's like, are you actually a pimp? That'd be like if I was like, yo, what's up? Yo, I'm a human trafficker. Yo. You're like, what?
That is-
why
that
is
exactly-
that something you
That's
admire?
exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what you're saying. Oh shit.
Like,
Yeah.
why are you? It's like, yeah, man, I'm a pimp. It's like, you think that just means like you can get a lot of sex. The pimp is not having sex with them.
Right.
Like he's like, yo, what's up, man? What, yo, you seem pretty cool. Yeah, man, I'm a total slave owner.
Yes.
You're like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
I'm a woman abuser.
Yeah, I'm a domestic abuser. What?
Okay. That's cool, I guess.
I think we should call this episode "The Machine Stops" in
The
honor
Machine
of the late great E.M. Forrester. We praise his name.
I think we should call this episode "Pimpin' Ain't Easy."
Pimpin' Eternal.
Eternal pimpin'. We'll come up with the title later. All right, cool. Well, like, subscribe.
Okay, but yes, lights are all that bullshit. But also, like, the whole point of this process is for you to a couple things. One, to not be a part of the problem, because you're the problem and you're the solution. Meaning, every bolt on the bridge is allowing itself to be loosened. If that makes
Every
sense. You're a
hoe
bolt.
could walk away from her pimp.
The bridge is the sum total of all the parts of the bridge. So it's not just a bolt. Like every single part of the bridge has these structural weaknesses in it. And collectively, those points can be more than what they are. Right. And I know it's a stupid analogy, but it's like, imagine you also want to have a bridge. That's our world. That's our system. We want to have a bridge. And we get to benefit from the bridge. We also get to walk across the bridge and utilize it and so forth. We're not just the pieces of the bridge. It's just an analogy. It's limited, right? But if you don't take responsibility for your part, you're like that weak point. If you don't walk your process, if you don't use the tools, because you are the solution, meaning the solution to this is to have a generation plus of children that are emotionally stable, that understand what realistic utopia is, which is everyone has what they need because they're not coming from a starting point of lack and survival. If survival is the biggest fear, don't we have the technology to solve it? And the problem is they're like, oh yeah, that's what the whole technological revolution is about. It's like, but it's still being used within the starting point of survival being a necessary focus point.
Yeah.
Like it's not solving the problem.
Right.
It's only doing it enough that you feel like you don't have to focus on your survival. It's not transcending survival.
Yeah.
And it's just doing it in a way where you still feel like you need more and more and more and more. So we have to address these points within ourselves. And the best ways to do that is to participate in the self-perfected group and to use the tools that the other people who are really fully applying themselves are using, TechnoTutor, DIP. Participate in the group, because there's like an aspect of community that you do need. It's like one of those structures that you don't want to just throw out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and if you look at the system right now, it's trying to throw out all that structure. It's like, no, just join the metaverse. That's your community. And it's like, that's not a real community. That's just you playing a video game online with people. That's not,
Yeah.
it's not real. It's like you're in a chat room. No, that's not a real community. This is like, and I know we're utilizing tech. It's not that technology is bad. Like, could you utilize some parts of the metaverse? Sure. Like it could be a cool way of using that to have meetings and so forth. Right. But the real point is physical. So those are all just auxiliary enhancements. You know what I mean? But they're not the point. The point is for you to develop the stability within yourself with a partner, with children, educate them properly, stand up in the system. And, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is if you don't like what these tech elite are doing, just become the tech elite with starting point. That's with the starting point that's different with principles. Right? That's what we're doing. We're looking for people to support in that and to do that with us. But if you just want to be a person who supports your kids and gives them effective education, that's cool. It's just, I know if the father is in the picture, which they have to be, what's their purpose? Because it's like you only need so many people to really stand up to do the dirty work, like the stuff Elon Musk is doing, buying Twitter, fighting their board and all this stuff, like you need that to happen. But Elon Musk doesn't have the principles we have. Right? He's got like 25,000 kids, I think, on different planets. I don't even know. Right. But the point is, like, he clearly is missing some points, right? Some principles, right? So that's what we're here to do. And we're looking for people to join us and go on this journey, right?
Yeah.
To stop the machine.
Yes.
No, it's just to change it, right? To change ourselves.
Yes. So join us. So if you don't know the Facebook group, we have a Facebook group. It's on Facebook called Self Perfected. Join us.
Is the Facebook group on Facebook still?
The Facebook.
It's the Facebook group, but it's on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken.
It's on Facebook.
It's a Facebook group. The way you get to the Facebook group is you have to go to Facebook.
That's it. Okay. So find us there on Facebook.
And if you're watching this on Facebook in the group, make sure you join the group. That's important. Make sure you join the Facebook group if you're watching this live right now on the Facebook group.
Great. If
Then
you're
we'll
not, join the group and then do that and join the group again
Yeah.
once you're
Yes.
in there. Yeah.
Just redo it.
Awesome.
Christine, any comments?
I
Any
was gonna
accolades
ask,
for our humor?
I was gonna ask you, do you remember what you were gonna say?
Nope. I probably made the point without realizing, and I'm sure one of us did.
Awesome.
Perhaps.
All right.
Yeah, that's
Bye,
it.
everybody.
See ya. Gotta hit this button. There it is.